Hi, welcome to another ProRevenge episode of StorytimeGuru. In this episode, we will read 3 of the best ProRevenge stories. Our first episode is titled, Relatives Lose Everything Because They Were Too Stupid to Keep Their Mouths Shut. Our second episode is titled, Beat a Craigslist Scammer at His Own Game. Our third episode is titled, Wasted a Scammer's Afternoon and Gas Money Using a Fake Facebook Account for Insulting Me Weeks Earlier. Okay then. Our 4RD episode is titled, Neighbor Likes to Park in Front of My House? Okay then. Hope you like it. If you like my content, please support my channel by clicking like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. Beat a Craigslist Scammer at His Own Game. Posted by Oregon Lost. So I was hunting for a rental house for the Valentine's Day weekend and wasn't finding much, so I popped into the local Craigslist page and found a place at a decent but very believable price. No contact info or website, so I emailed through the Craigslist relay. Everything sounds legit up until he asks me to pay using Zelle or bank transfer. Immediately knew it was a scam, but I played along acting confused because I'd never used Zelle. He sends me the Zelle info to send the payment. At this point I reverse image search the cabin and find the actual property owner info and call them. He confirmed that he has had this scam happen before, and angry people show up expecting a rental that is already legitimately reserved and demanding a refund. I give him the links and info to the fake Craigslist posting so he can report it. So now I have confirmed that this is 100% a scam, so I decide to have a go at this guy and see how far I can get. After a few more confused sounding email regarding how to get the money to him over Zelle, I send him the request, but instead of paying him I send it as a request for payment. I send a few more messages saying it is not going through, and then I get a notification saying a payment has been received. Sure enough, he approved my payment request and sent me the money he was trying to get me to send him. So I had over $400 sitting in my Zelle account from a guy in Nigeria who was trying to scam me out of my romantic weekend. Best replies by Melio Morto and Calabat123. Melio Morto. Did you thank him, at least? Calabat123. When you finally decide to tell mine that you reverse scammed him, tell him that you're that Nigerian prince. Relatives lose everything because they were too stupid to keep their mouths shut. Posted by Theaj Project. A bit of a context here. I work as a lawyer for an excellent and famous law firm here in northern Italy. My family went through some though times. In the last 9 years, we had to face a brutal divorce, with my dad having depleted every single cent he could. One of my aunts was brutally murdered because of a €150 cautionary deposit. My granddad was diagnosed with cancer, and some other funny stuff in the middle. Because of that, our bonds became stronger and stronger. Must say that with my family, I mean my mother, her parents and my 2 aunts this year, COVID-19 managed to take away both my aunts. I loved them to the moon and back, but one of them was married to a complete douchebag. He always considered himself to be better and smarter than anyone else, and so were his relatives. My aunt and her husband, I straight up refused to call him uncle, lived in a huge house, and so did his brother with her wife and son. He died around 7-8 years ago and left almost everything he could just to his brother and his family, completely ignoring my family because OP's granddad is already rich. Why should I leave anything to his daughter and grandson? Basically, this year, my aunt was won by COVID. I was grieving, since I really loved her and cared about her, and I already lost another aunt prior. When the notary called us to read the will, both me and my mother came out completely astonished. She left us just a few things, even though she always said she would have left us basically everything. I don't need the money involved that much, as I already inherited from my other aunt, and my job pays me really well, but my mom always had to struggle, financially speaking. It would have been a huge help, since she doesn't want anything from me. I tried to give her some money in the past, but she always sent them back, being stubborn as she can be. As we walked out, I pulled my cousin by my side to ask him just one thing. Hey, cousin, listen, I know it's a dumb question, but, when I last saw her, I brought my aunt a little ceramic bell, shaped as a lady. She holded it to her chest all the time. I'd like to have it back. It would be a memory of her. He, smiling at me as I was the most stupid people on earth. Yeah, sure, whatever. What I could do with that stupid bell, take it. But don't expect us to give you anything more. We had to sweat bullets for this will to work. I'm sorry, what you mean? He realized he screwed up, so he just left. My mom went back home. I headed back to my office to take a closer look on my aunt's will. It was bulletproof, and the handwriting was, without any doubt, my aunt's. So, what the hell did he mean? It took me several weeks to finally get the clue. As previously mentioned by my husband, it was just this small phrase, "My aunt's husband died 7 years before." How the hell could he mention anything? Since zombies are still nowhere to be seen and I don't know of any deceased person talking from his grave, I started to scan the whole will once again. Things I never noticed became as clear as the sun. There were missing pages, my aunt numbered them, but the second and fourth pages were missing, with sentences left hanging there. Some of the corrections were legit, but looking closely, there were a few of them where the uncertain hand of a 81-year-old lady suddenly became stronger and more precise. My aunt's husband was mentioned every time my aunt was talking about money and valuables. He did say something about the savings, but apparently his tithes that were to be given to charity didn't need his approval. Strange, huh? When I talked to my mom and her parents about this, my granddad, who is 74 and still has more strength and lucidity than your average 40-years-old dude, mentioned my aunt's husband will. We don't know what he said, his family never let us even take a look at it and it wasn't worth it to sue them. I went back to the notary the next day, asking to see the will. Since I was a relative, he let me, but asked what was going on. I simply said you'll know soon enough. When I read it, I started laughing so hard that even the secretary came to see what the fuck was going on. I rushed back to my office and started to write everything down. Shit was about to hit the fan, but not for my family. After a few days, me, my mom, her parents and my aunt's relatives met once again in front of the notary. I already told him what was happening. I could see him trying not to look disgusted as my aunt's husband's beloved ones walked in. "Notary, we are all here. Apparently, Op has some things to discuss with us, concerning inheritances." You could hear a pin drop a mile away. I stood up and opened my bag. My family was smiling. My relatives were staring daggers from their eyes. Me, as we all know, Auntie left everything to you. Nothing is wrong here, as she didn't have any direct relationship with anyone in this room. What is wrong, is the reason behind it. I handed a copy of the will to everyone, with some parts being highlighted. Me, as you can see, pages are missing, some corrections are different, to say the least, but, most importantly, my uncle is cited quite often. This led me to his will. At this point, my relatives turned whiter than snow. My cousin tried to stop me, telling me I couldn't possibly use my uncle's will, as more than 5 years passed. The notary told him that I totally could, as the allowance to contest a will is 10 years. He kept silent. Me, he left to my aunt everything he had if she would have left it to you as she died. You see, in our state it's not legal to make such a kind of contract, so, I want to let you know that you just lost all your rights on my uncle's will, and you are all to be sued for false declaration in public deed and attempted fraud. They started screeching and screaming, calling me names and wishing me an obviously pleasant and late death, all because one of them wasn't clever enough to shut his mouth. Now they lost everything they had, since their farm, their money, their house and their cars were all my uncle's. They have been forced to leave the house they were living in, all their bank accounts have been blocked and even their farm had to be closed since it was also my uncle's previous activity. Since the correction they made were actually very precise and some items, jewelry, ingots, cash, are now mysteriously missing. They even have to pay for an equal value. They had a little empire, but managed to lose everything over greed and stupidity. Ladies and gentlemen, please, listen to me. If you want to screw with someone, at least have the courtesy of not doing it with a lawyer. Wasted a scammer's afternoon and gas money using a fake Facebook account for insulting me weeks earlier. Posted by Mediocre Fisherman. Back in September I went to look at a pair of moose antlers on Facebook Marketplace that my dad was interested in. He lives in a small cabin on my property and thought the antlers would look cool over his front door. We get there, and the dude is clearly high on coke, jittery, keeps swiping his nose, etc. We met him at a storage rental place, so he had to let us in with his code, and we were stuck in the facility until he let us back out. We get to his rental unit and he gets the antlers out. They were very clearly fake. He'd said he'd spray painted them brown to make them look like they were still in velvet. It was obvious he'd sprayed them to try to make them look real. The weight was off, the color was off, there were several large cracks in them and you could see they were white inside, not bone colored. There were also several points broken off and the material inside was white and powdery, again, not bone. He kept insisting they could be fixed with some epoxy. Finally, tapping your fingers on them made a drum noise, so they were hollow inside. At this point, I hadn't said a word at all. I was just along for the ride with my dad. Dad politely tells the guy that we're going to pass. He thinks they are fake. Thanks but no thanks. This guy goes off the deep end, screaming at us, calling us all sorts of names, insulting us, our mothers, etc. Then he starts screaming at us that we were locked in there with him and weren't leaving until he was ready to go. Dad and I get in the truck, and luckily another customer was coming into their unit and we were able to get out of the locked gate when they came in. We both thought it was hilarious, how off the wall this guy acted and how fake the antlers looked in person. I stew on this for a few weeks and finally come up with a revenge plan. I didn't say a single word to the guy and he insulted my entire family tree, wife, intelligence, etc. I create a new Facebook account with the dumbest old person name I could come up with, then, I use a bunch of Hide the Pain Harold photos to populate it with, then start adding as many friends as I can, posting dumb crap about old black and white movies, my prostate, etc. Spent a few days crap loading this account as much as I could. Then, once the account was 2 weeks old and I could get on Facebook groups, I go to a few of the groups I knew this guy was on and find some of his items he had for sale. Luckily, he had 2 large bookcases for sale. Great, something big and awkward to move around. Next, I do some research and find the most pain in the butt location in my city to get to. I pick a place that has no highway on-ramps, so it takes at least half an hour to get to it off the highway. I message him, and I ask if he would deliver since I only have a sedan, and he says yes. For $50 to cover his gas and a helper because they would take 2 people to move around. We set up a date and time, and I tell him I'm going to meet him at a nearby grocery store, since my house is hard to find. Finally, the time arrives, he messages me that he is at the grocery store. Now I come up with every annoying old person slow thing I can think of. I'm putting my shoes on. My wife is in the shower and I can't leave in case she slips, then oh, we've not gone anywhere in so long because of this China virus. My car battery is dead. Mr. Scammer finally asks for my address and says he will find the place. I get on Google Maps and find the most pain in the butt street to get to, knowing he's driving a full-size van and towing a trailer with the bookshelves, so I find a street in the very center of old badly laid out neighborhood, got on Street View, and look for where the house numbers stop, and pick a number a few above that one. I test it in Google Maps, and Google Maps isn't smart enough to know that house number doesn't exist. It just points you at the end of the dead-end street. So I relay this address. Of course I make sure to mess it up a few times and get him lost in the process. After about 90 minutes he messages that he can't find that house number but he's on my street. Can I please come outside? I reply back with no thanks. Him no thanks, what? Me I walked out there and saw them, not interested in buying. My Facebook account blows up for the next hour with him trying to call me, video chat, sending all kinds of horrible messages about how I'm a liar and a cheater. I never respond back. I check it occasionally and about every 2 weeks he sends me a nasty message still. Dude had no idea who it was that messed with him, or why it happened. I'm kind of debating about doing it again. Best reply by Computant 2. When he refused to let you leave the storage area he committed the crime of unlawful detainment, basically the misdemeanor version of kidnapping. It is probably too late to really do anything about it, but you could report it to the police and ask if they could send an officer to his place sometime to explain why he can do that. I'm sure he wouldn't panic and flush his drugs down the toilet when he saw a cop at the door. Neighbor likes to park in front of my house. Okay then. Posted by Metallic and D2. This happened a few years ago. My neighbor started parking on the street behind my car, like literally inches, for no apparent reason. My neighbor has a driveway, empty, and also live 2 houses down the street. I don't have a driveway, so on-street parking is a must for me. So, after a few weeks, I asked if it was necessary to park so close when there was literally no cars on the street for over a 1/4 mile. He said no, but there's no law against it with a big shit-eating grin on his face. A few weeks pass by, and my car gets hit because someone thought there was enough room to clear as his truck blocked the view of my car entirely. I see this happen, but unfortunately can't get a model or license plate number. I find my neighbor's email address, because I really didn't feel like talking to him, and asked him again, if he could just park further down the road, closer to his house. He replied nope, suck on it. Okay, I had lived here for quite a long time, and never had any issues with him or any other neighbor. I keep to myself, never make noise, don't have any noisy pets or parties, etc. His truck has his business name on it. Google it, find out it's his own business, lots of Yelp reviews, BBB rating, etc. All these links point to his website. I go to check his website, it doesn't load up. I head over to Whois and see that the domain isn't registered. I snag it. Before I think of what to do with it, I Google the owner's name and find out he's been convicted of murdering a child 20-ish years ago. I find a handful of links that details his story rather explicitly. I copy/paste all those links into an email to him, a throwaway account so he can't just reply to me as I deleted it afterward. Said something like, well, if you want to be a jerk for no reason, I just bought your business domain, here's all the links I plan on posting on it. I don't have to list your business name because all of your business listings across the internet have this URL pointing to it. Keep parking like a jerk. Yes, it's legal, but you are willfully doing this just to annoy me. I legally bought your domain, and can legally link these articles. Park behind me again, and I'll launch it. Within an hour his truck was moved into his driveway. He asked me for the domain, and I told him when either you move, or I move, I'll hand it over. Until then it'll remain offline. Edit. Only thing fake was the time frame. This happened last week, not a few years ago. He was originally charged with capital murder, but his lawyer convinced him of a plea deal for manslaughter because they have way more than enough to convict you of capital murder. Edit 2. For those saying this is fake, I'm putting my house on the market in 2 to 3 months. When it sells, I'll come back and post all the news articles as I won't be anywhere near here, so doxing will be much more difficult. If you like my content, please support my channel by clicking like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell.